Hey everybody, it's Jason Blah here. Now that my obligatory informative videos are done for the day, it's time to talk about current events in the online fitness community. And the ironic part is that normally I say the bodybuilding world has no place in the fitness community, right? It's not fitness, but apparently the IFBB has announced that they're going to start a wellness division, which in theory would fall under the fitness world. So let me go ahead and put on my +5 hat of speechcraft, lovingly called by many of you my +5 hat of autism. And let's talk about this. All right, guys, this is interesting to me because what is it I always tell you guys about bodybuilding? That it is a repugnant, degenerate lifestyle, and it has no place in the fitness world. And I'm talking specifically about more geared towards IFBB, NPC, all of that stuff. Mainly natural bodybuilding is just really hard on your body. It's not quite the same in terms of the entire counterculture of the hardcore bodybuilding world, but even natural bodybuilding really isn't fitness. And it has to do with the fact that when you look at the research, even on natural bodybuilders, their health is horrific when they get close to competition time. It's basically manorexia. It's a form of starvation, and people diet themselves down to levels of body fat that hurt them, and that's what the actual data shows. And I'm not telling anyone, like when you say that, people always see things in black and white. They can't separate that you're saying that anyone who wants to look good is harming themselves, right? Because that's not what I'm saying. Not what I'm saying at all. But I'm saying that actual bodybuilding is a competitive endeavor, right? You're not a bodybuilder until you've stepped on a stage, just like you're not a powerlifter until you've done your first powerlifting meet. So bodybuilding is of itself, that competitive environment, harmful to your health, even without the drugs involved, even without all the prostitution and all the party drugs and everything that bodybuilding circles tend to do, combined with all their anabolics and other stuff. It's still harmful. And so it's interesting that they're going to have a wellness division, because I'm looking at this going, well, how exactly are they going to monitor this? Meaning, is this going to be done off blood work? Or what are they going to call a wellness division? And I'm going to be curious to see what they do, and maybe it'll move bodybuilding in a direction that would move it into the fitness world, because that is something that I think has to be emphasized over and over and over, and I encourage all of you to tell your favorite fitness personalities when they start promoting bodybuilding in a positive light. Given the history of bodybuilding, given what we know about it, they are anti-fitness, right? There is literally, from a health and fitness perspective, promoting bodybuilding is really no different than promoting smoking cigarettes or eating McDonald's every day, because in terms of health outcomes, it's just as harmful, right? And that includes natural bodybuilding. And it has to do with the fact that these are people who might 90% of the time have a great lifestyle, or at least 60% of the year, right? They have a great diet, training, hard training, and we know strength training and resistance training has enormous health benefits, overwhelming health benefits, to the point where everyone should be doing it. But it is the actual hardships they put their body through for the competition that harms their health. And it is harmful. It's psychologically harmful, psychologically damaging, and it's physically damaging to your endocrine system and your organs. So it's like, one of the things I've got to wonder is, how are they going to set up judging standards in such a way that they don't conflict each other? Because right now, if they allow people in these sort of divisions, and if they're going to do blood work, I can tell you by default, the guys can't get ripped. They can't get ripped. And I don't mean the average street person's idea of ripped, because 12% body fat is ripped to the average Joe. Like, you ask the average man or woman, and you show a guy who lifts weights, who's put on 20 pounds of muscle since they started lifting, 20 pounds, who's 12% body fat, they'll say they're ripped. All right? They'll say they're ripped. Now, you go ask a bodybuilder, and they'll call them a fat ass. So, perspective here. Here's your problem. 7% body fat, it is almost impossible to have healthy blood work. I'm going to state that again. And that's not me. That's what the studies show. That's what Eric Helms' research showed. So you've got a question right there. When you have a guy who was a natural bodybuilder, promotes natural bodybuilding, and for his doctoral work, he did a bunch of blood work and studies on a bunch of pre-contest natural bodybuilders. And what did he find? Their blood work across the board looked horrific. In other words, when you get to 6 or 7% body fat, if they're doing any sort of wellness test, you're going to fail it, because you will have horrific blood work. And that's what they generally found. When they pulled a endocrine system stuff, they pulled a hormone profile. What did they find? The guys who are 6 and 7% body fat, if you look at their hormone levels, you think they're a 75-year-old man. Every single one of them had clinically low testosterone, low thyroid output, everything. So that's the first thing I'm going to ask. They go into these wellness divisions. What are you going to do? You're going to test their hormone levels. You're going to test their blood work. It's going to be pretty bad. It's going to be pretty bad if they're dieting down that lean. So, I mean, it's going to be a case of you can't tell them we want you to be ripped and to have good blood work, because you can't really do both. So I'm hoping their wellness, they actually test their wellness and health and physical fitness. Same thing, when you start getting that lean, performance degradates unless drugs are in the mix. What about all their other stuff? Well, that's going to limit what drugs they can do. I mean, realistically, if you really wanted to determine their wellness, I guess they would just do blood work and stuff. On the pull a blood work profile going into it, and maybe have that be part of the wellness thing. But they're not going to spend money on all that. So I got to wonder what that would be, because that would be the interesting thing. Have a division to where the guys have to have their lipid profile tested. Because that's the problems you have with bodybuilding in general. They have too much visceral body fat, right? The fat around their organs. And I mean, when I mentioned that, remember my DEXA scan, like even when I was above 20% body fat, the technicians were shocked that my visceral fat was so low. Like that one DEXA scan I went in when I was bulked up at my heaviest, I was still at 23% body fat, but I had like half a pound of visceral fat around my organs. And so they were surprised. And then when it went lower, when I dropped down under 20% body fat, my visceral fat dropped even more. Well, they had also mentioned they have some bodybuilders who come in who are below 10% body fat, who some of them have 4 or 5 pounds of fat around their organs, right? 4 or 5 pounds of fat around their organs still, while being ripped. The drug abuse. And that's fatty liver and all of that. So you got to wonder, are you guys going to check their visceral fat? You're going to pull their lipid profiles if their HDL is rock bottom? Well, there goes. You can't use tren. Tren's out of the equation right there. If they come in and their HDL is too low or their triglycerides are too high. Fasting glucose, right? These are your concerns. I mean, that's your problem with bodybuilding. If you were to go do physicals and look at all these parameters for most bodybuilders, oftentimes even the ones who are not even abusing that many drugs, that low HDL, the high triglycerides, too much visceral fat around their organs, crashed testosterone production, crashed thyroid production. So what exactly are they going to do with this wellness division? What are they going to do to determine that these people are well? Because I can tell you, if they look anything like a bodybuilder, if they look like what the bodybuilding world has now decided is what a traditional bodybuilder looks like, there's no parameters for wellness that they're going to pass. They're going to have to look like the guys did in the 50s in bodybuilding, right? If they look like Steve Reeves, they'll be okay. So go back and use that as an example. I mean, if they bring back the true golden era of bodybuilding, they will pass wellness tests. They'll be very physically fit people, most likely. Their blood work will look great. They'll be in great health. But you start enforcing even 1970s bodybuilding standards again. Even for the IFBB, for any sort of division, they're going to fail the blood work. If you do any sort of real blood work or test to determine their fitness, how much visceral fat they have, their HDL, their lipid profile, hormone profile, fasting glucose, you study any of that, and anyone who looks like even a 1970s IFBB pro, or even what current natural bodybuilding even seems to demand from what they want their physiques to look like in terms of body fat, they're going to fail these tests. They're going to fail them. So it's almost like, what exactly are they going to call a wellness division? I would support the idea if it's actually promoting health and fitness, but bodybuilding doesn't do that. It actually promotes death. It's a death cult. It's just as bad for you as being on the standard American diet or being a chain smoker. So I'll be curious to see what they do. I'll be watchful and hopeful, and let's see what they actually do with it. All right, guys, well, that's really all I have to say on that today. I hope it's been informative, and I will talk to you guys next time.